Hey, Faith family. So glad to be back with you guys as we continue in our current series, Revelation, Jesus' timeless call to his people. This week, as we look at Jesus' message to the church at Philadelphia, the faithful church, let's listen to what Jesus tells the disciples in Philadelphia and then consider that message that Jesus is sending to us now through this message from long ago. Just as in the other letters, Jesus chooses to introduce himself in this letter in a way that has particular relevance for the Philadelphian church. So there's a uniqueness to this description, but in more ways than one. This description is the only one of the 7 letters not to be drawn from chapter 1. Chapter 1:18 does mention the keys of death and Hades, but here's only one key mentioned, the key of David. The language of verse 7 comes right out of Isaiah 22, says he goes on to say, "Behold, I have set before you an open door, which no one is able to shut." I love how he uses this key and door language. The church is clearly suffering. They're being persecuted, and like the church in Smyrna, the Philadelphian church is being persecuted by Jews in that city. And just like his message to the Smyrnan church, Jesus refers to these Jews as the synagogue of Satan, since they have unwittingly aligned themselves with the devil by positioning themselves against God and God's people. Given the language about the open door and the key, it's safe to assume that these Jews were attempting to discourage the Christians. You think you're God's people, and you're nothing more than dirty Gentiles and unfaithful Jews. We are God's covenant people. We have Moses and the law. We have David. We have the promises. You are nothing but pretenders and corrupters of the truth. That's what they would have been telling them. So I think they were attempting to shut the door on these Christians, declaring that they were barred and they were prohibited from entering into the favor and presence of God. Remember what Jesus said to many of the Jewish leaders in Matthew 23:13. He says, "But woe to you, scribes and Pharisees and hypocrites, for you shut," it's the same word, "the kingdom of heaven in people's faces, for you neither enter yourselves nor allow those who would enter in to go in." And clearly these Christians have no real influence. They're in some sense powerless against the forces which oppose them. But look at how he is reassuring them. He says, "I have the key of David. I am the king of this kingdom. I say who is in and out. I've set before you an open door, and they cannot shut it. Behold, I will make them come and bow at your feet, and they will learn that I have loved you." And because they've patiently endured in the face of this suffering, Jesus assures them that they will be protected from a more intense and larger scale time of suffering that is coming. Jesus has already told 3 of the 5 churches we study that he will come to them, but that was in the context of judgment. Here, the context is most certainly one of comfort. You may recall Jesus similarly encouraged the faithful in Thyatira, "Only hold fast to what you have until I come." Whatever we might feel or think about God's involvement in our suffering, we cannot say that he is distant and distracted. No, he is poised and prepared. He has and will intervene. His purpose will not be delayed. What an encouragement that must have been to the Philadelphian church. With all this talk about doors and keys, it reminded me of Jesus addressing the Pharisees in John 10, verses 1 through 11, with one of his "I am" statements. He begins by speaking about robbers and thieves and sheep and shepherds and gatekeepers and strangers, but he doesn't connect the dots by specifically identifying who these characters are. He doesn't say, "This is who I am and this is who you are." Later, though, we see Jesus explain these words in verses 1 through 5 by connecting the dots. In these verses, he specifically identifies who the Good Shepherd is. And this one specific identification illuminates this whole figure of speech being used. "I am the door," Jesus says. "I am the door to the sheep." Do you realize what this says about the absolute security of the sheep? This means that it's Jesus who defends us and keeps us safe. It means that to get at us, Satan and other enemies of the church have to cross over Jesus, and they can't possibly be successful at that. Once the crowd is able to make this connection, then they're then able to make connections as to who the sheep, the robbers, and the thieves are. The Pharisees are not caring for and leading the people of God. They're seeking to silence, kill, and destroy the Good Shepherd. They're at war with the only one who can protect and care for the people of God. He identifies himself as the exclusive door to which one can enter and leave the fold and find life, abundant life. The point Jesus is making here is clear. He is not one of many doors. He is the one and only door of the sheep. He's the only entryway into the sheepfold. He is the exclusive protector of the sheep. And as we see in the next few verses, He is the means to green pastures. He is the means to safety. He is our only hope for provision and protection. He is the door, and we must trust that. And perseverance is the test of genuine faith and salvation, and we must hold fast to what we have.